Tanya Talks. I'm your host, Tanya Ricketts. Real talk, real people, real issues, real events. Tonight we are talking about self-trust and what that means. And joining us in tonight's conversation is my co-host, Theresa Simpatico. Welcome.
Thanks, Tanya.
And joining us also this evening is Gina Hatzis. Welcome.
Hey.
Hey, so I just want to introduce you to the audience this evening. Gina is, you are a recovering journalist, special guest with me this evening, 27-year global award-winning speaker and confidence crusader, specializing in epic empowerment, stellar leadership, and consciousness connection. So, Gina, you are also a visionary of the Too Much Woman movement, which everybody's got to check out your TikToks to see what that looks like, what that means. If anybody's curious what Too Much Woman means, you really got to check this out. Your goal is to celebrate women as they boldly step into their too muchness to change the world. And I celebrate that because I think we need more of that support in stepping forward. I will mention it at the end of the show. You guys can find Gina at ginahatzis.com, Hatzis. Also Facebook, Too Much Woman, TikTok, Gina Hatzis, Instagram and YouTube, Gina Too Much Woman. So there we go. So let's get started because I feel it's going to be, I don't think we're going to have enough time for tonight, but we will look to fit it all in. What does it mean to have self-trust? Gina, I'm going to open up with you this evening and just really explain to us what that means to you, where your story began, and let's get started.
Thank you so much for that beautiful intro. And I'm so excited to be here and in communication with you and all your people. Hey, people. So just a little bit about why self-trust and why I'm so passionate right now at this time talking about this. After over 20 years in the personal growth industry as a speaker and confidence crusader, consultant, I came to a crossroads for myself. And what I recognize is that everything that I taught really was built on a solid foundation or a lack thereof of trusting myself. You know, when I get to the root of what is confidence, what's self-esteem, what is self-love, everybody says, love yourself, but nobody freaking tells you how. Right. And so I really had to, my whole journey's always been about connecting the dots for myself and then sharing that with other people. And a few years ago, I came to a crossroads and I recognized that all of the challenges in my life really came from the areas where I lacked trust in myself. So I wanted to start off by let's define self-trust. Let's define what it means, because a lot of people misunderstand it. They think that self-trust means I'm going to start this business and knock it out of the park, or I'm going to commit to this relationship and it's going to work, it's going to last, or I'm going to start a diet and I'm going to just like stick to it. I trust that I'm going to push through all the obstacles, but that's actually not self-trust at all. Self-trust is the assured reliance that no matter what happens, I'm going to take care of me. No matter what happens, I will do right by me. No matter what happens, because we can't control anything outside of ourselves. If the business doesn't succeed, if the guy leaves, if you are betrayed, if the world has a global pandemic, I will do right by me. I will do what I need to do to take care of me. So then I started to excavate, what the heck does that even mean? And now it's the core of all of my work.
Okay, all right. I like that. Theresa, I'm going to let you add to that.
Yeah, I like the crossroads because that's where it was for me. I was at a crossroads in my life. I was in my late 30s, faced a lot of trauma in my life, continued with that trauma, continued with my past reliving itself. And, I thought about this. I thought when I was young, I didn't have a lot of people around me that I could trust. So I made all my decisions thinking that it was trust, but really it was survival, right? How can I survive this situation because of the trauma that I was in those times? That's what that was about when I was younger. So in my late 30s, I came across this crossroads. I was married. I was in a toxic relationship. And I said, okay, I can't stay here. I had to go within and trust my gut. For once, everybody else thought I was crazy. I lost my family, cousins, relatives, many people, because they thought I was making a massive mistake. But I knew that if I had stayed there, that I was going to get sick. I had gone, I actually had my vocal cords operated on because I had precancerous cells. It was like I had lost my voice. It was my body. I just wasn't feeling right. So the emotional was turning into the physical. And I thought, either I make a change and trust myself because I need to make this change, or I stay here and listen to everybody else because they know what's better for me, which they don't, because we know that at some point you start to recognize that others don't know what's best for you, that you know what's best for you. So I like the way Gina said it. I was taking care of myself for that one moment in time. That's where it started for me, was making the decision to say, no more. I know what everybody else wants and needs and what's good for them, but this is not good for me. So I went with my gut. I went with what I needed to do, and I did it. And that was the first time I can say in my life that I actually trusted something that I was doing. I trusted that no matter what, this was me taking care of me, and nobody else could say anything to me. And when I mean losing family, like I didn't talk to my father for months. Like a lot of people looked at me like this was crazy. What are you doing? And part of that is because we only know what happens inside of our homes, right? So we weren't always, like, nobody really knew what was going on. And that's fine. But even when I said what was going on, it didn't matter. Nobody cared about that. They just seemed to care about us parting ways, right? And not what was good for me. But at that moment in time, that was what was good for me. And I did it. So just to expand on that, when I do things now, I look at what is good for me in that situation. Of course, I always take other people into consideration, but I have to do what I feel in my gut is right. And that's what I go based on. I go based on, what do I feel inside? Does this make me feel good? You know, is this a good environment for me? Is this what I need in my life? Is this what I want in my life? And I go based on what I feel inside versus what the exterior is telling me.
I think it's real. Can I just respond to that? Because there was so much in there to unpack. I really want to just say this. When I say self-trust, so I think it's important to unpack not only what it is, because I gave you kind of a definition, a vague definition, but what it's not. Because if we can identify what it's not, then we can create a pattern interrupt and say, oh, shoot, that's where I'm not trusting myself. That's where. So for example, when we don't speak up, when we don't ask for what we need, when we prioritize other people's comfort, feelings, ideas, decisions over our own, that's a lack of self-trust. When we don't have clear boundaries or uphold the consequence of a boundary that we're trying to uphold, that is a lack of self-trust. When we don't move in the direction or take any kind of risk that feels uncomfortable, even though we know it's the right decision, that's a lack of self-trust. When we prioritize goodness over truth, because most of us are groomed to be good girls, people pleasers, martyrs, like what a good mother, what a good woman.
It's funny that I just have to say, I'm listening to both of you talking, the first word that came in my head was martyrism.
Yeah, right. Right. And so in all of these instances, what we do is we break our own self-trust. We break our own hearts. We actually self-abandon in each of these instances. And we can talk about where that comes from and how to change that. But I think it's really important to identify, when we say we don't trust ourselves, it's not just trusting our gut. That's one component for sure. And Theresa, you identified that you knew for yourself what was right. But it's also understanding all the micro ways that we self-abandon and we break our own self-trust over and over and over again in the name of goodness, in the name of a commitment, in the name of fill in the blank. And so we create this habit and we perpetuate it over and over again.
Absolutely.
I remember thinking to myself, and the word betray, like I resonate with that, because I remember waking up to the idea that every single time I betray myself, I open up these portals I kind of imagined of allowing the world to betray me. And every time I took care of myself, I opened up portals for the world to take care of And you know what, the thing that I want to touch upon with the audience is, because we're talking about this, but when we start with this self-trust, it's not that easy. It's pretty, because we are living in a space where we're going against the grain of everything that our nature knows.
Based on experience, right? Things that have happened to us. You
Well,
know,
even
the stories that we tell
taught.
ourselves, the stories that other people tell ourselves. I mean, that's.
Well, I've been taught to betray myself. Like for me personally, I was taught to betray myself. I was taught to be the martyr. I was taught that everybody else's needs came before my own. So I was skewed to even recognize that I even had a need.
We're all socialized to betray ourselves. This is such an important part of the conversation, I think, because what we don't recognize, it's not just bad parents or narcissistic exes or, like the media. We have to understand that even well-meaning, even myself as a parent, we socialize our children not to trust themselves. So let's give some examples, right? So imagine in childhood, a child is very emotional or very sensitive. Maybe they cry, maybe they get upset easily. I was told my whole life I was too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic, that I overdid everything. So what happens when a child cries or gets very upset, outside of what the parent thinks is acceptable or normal, and they're reprimanded for it? So maybe they're shamed for it. Maybe they're sent to their room. Maybe they're told to calm down, or that they're overreacting, or maybe they're made fun of, or whatever the case may be. What happens is the child actually fragments. The child actually splits and divides within themselves. And the reason they do that is because all we want, not only as children, but as humans, is connection and belonging. And so in order to maintain that connection and belonging with our parents, because that's all we freaking want, we fragment within ourselves. So we take that too sensitive child or that abundance of emotion and we tuck it away. We lock it away. Our feelings are shamed or unacceptable or whatever it is. And we put that somewhere so that we can establish or reestablish that connection. Now, over time, what happens is we fragment over and over and over again. And no wonder we get to a place in our lives where we say, I don't even recognize myself anymore. I don't even know who I am. I can't make a decision to save my life. We get stuck in this wheel of analysis paralysis as adults, because it's like, I don't even know what I like. I don't even know what I want, right? And so healing is wholeness. Healing is taking all those fragmented parts and reclaiming them. It's the reclamation of your truth. And that's what Theresa was describing. It's like reclaiming her voice, literally, literally healing her voice. Yeah. So healing is the coming together of, and that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about trusting yourself.
Absolutely. Like in order to trust yourself, you have to know yourself, right? And that's part of it. We don't know ourselves anymore because of all of those factors, like you were talking about. I like the fragmentation. I like the way you put it, right? I always say we're like the onions, right? And just so many layers and layers and layers, and we just got to keep peeling them back. And it's so hard to get there, right? It takes a lot of work, Gina. You can attribute to this too. Like it's not simple. It's because we're so fragmented. It took me a long time to say, I trust this decision. I'm doing this because this is the right thing for me, and you're right. And the martyr, I always said I was the martyr of the family. I had to do what was right. I had to be there for everybody. Something happened, I had to run, and not that that's a bad thing, to care and be compassionate, because I think that's also a good thing. But the reason we do it is because it's an expectation sometimes, as opposed to the want to do it. And so when you say the fragmentation, though, I think that's so important, because that's where my journey of healing started, is when I finally made that decision and I was able to say, and it was hard, like it was really, really tough, because I knew even in that moment when I was making that decision that something beyond my control was going to happen, because I knew that people in my life were going to be critical, judgmental, that they were going to say things to me that I wasn't going to like. And I knew what I was going to face after I made that decision. And I did. And I still trusted myself that it was the right decision and did it anyways. And that took a lot. That is hard. those fragmented pieces take a long time to put together again.
Yeah, I want to speak to that because I do agree that it can be very difficult and it can take a lifetime. But I also want to give our viewers hope, because here's what I've also come to believe. I want you to think of self-trust as a muscle, literally a muscle. And for most of our lives, our self-trust muscle has been in a sling because we keep breaking our hearts, we keep breaking our self-trust. So our muscle literally is in a sling. And whether, you know, you've had a cast on your arm or a body part before, you know what happens is when you don't use it for a while, it comes out of the cast or out of the sling and it's weak as can I swear on here? I don't know, but it's weak, right? Like I can't even like scratch my nose because it's so weak. However, here's the really good news. And this is so important for if you're listening to this to hear, is that self-trust has muscle memory. Just like if you haven't taken your ass to the gym in 25 years, you start to go and yeah, you're going to be sore the first few days, but guess what? Your body remembers. It wants to be healthy. It wants to be strong, and it will quickly rebound. And so what I teach, and this is so fundamental because for the longest time I thought, and a lot of my clients say, you know, I'm so broken. It's been 20, 30, 40, 50 years of being this way. How am I ever going to change? And what I really want you to hear if you're listening to this is that your body has muscle memory. Your self-trust muscle has muscle memory. And when you understand the tools that can start to give you your strength back, what you'll notice is your whole life will start to rearrange itself. So you don't have to go from like 0 to 180 and heal all your childhood trauma and like do something drastic like Theresa did. She literally, you know, made the switch. But for most of my clients, it's 1 degree, consistently 1 degree of lifting that 5-pound weight, then a 6-pound weight, then a 7-pound weight. And you'll notice that your whole life starts to shift just based on your consistency. So I think it's really important because it can feel overwhelming, right, guys? Like if your whole life you've been like you've been the martyr, prioritizing everyone, it can feel overwhelming to start. And I want you to know it doesn't have to be.
No, and we talk about this a lot, actually, Gina. Like everything is in small steps, right? It doesn't have to everything happen at once. Right. My decision was a big decision because I knew that it was life or death for me. I literally felt my body like saying to me, it's now or never, right? So yeah, I made a big decision. But now, like that was a big decision. That was hard. But after that, there's a lot of other decisions that I've made, you know, and I take small steps, and I've taken the small steps, and I'm here. And you're right. Like I am in such a great place, and I suffered a lot of trauma, abuse, abandonment. We talk a lot about, you know, we talk a lot about that as well, because that's a major thing for me, because I didn't have my mother in my life, and she was in and out of my life. And those things, it took me a while, but you're right, little by little, in recognizing, number one, who I was as a person, as a human, recognizing my true self really helped to move me along. It didn't happen all at once, and that's true. And it doesn't have to happen all at once, right? But I totally agree with that, and I like that perspective.
I'm listening to you both, and I'm making connections to my own self with this whole self-trust and developing muscles. And I remember for myself, and I can only speak on my journey, when I started to understand that I was betraying myself, as you put it, Gina, we're constantly breaking our own hearts and we're betraying ourselves. I remember starting to practice in the moment and being present, to close my eyes, go to my heart, and ask myself, what did my heart really feel in the moment? What was true? What did I really want? And developing the muscles to courageously put forth my voice to state it. And as I started to do that, I will admit that it wasn't always well received, but I spent more of my time celebrating the fact that I used my voice. I went to my heart, and I was true to who I am. Mm-hmm. And I stayed anchored in that truth.
Beautiful.
And as I started to do that, I started to strengthen that muscle that we talk about. For me, I call it the heart muscle. And as I started to feel good about taking care of myself, I started to realize that I could now trust myself in situations. When I met somebody for the first time, I asked myself, was this the right person for me to develop a relationship with, a friendship with, whatever it may be? And somehow going to my heart and centering myself and being still and asking for the truth within my soul and having the courage has reshaped my entire life. And I'll let anybody speak to that for their own.
Beautiful. I want to, if I can, I think it's really important. I love this conversation. I really, really do. And I want to give people who are watching practical, tangible, actionable things that they can do to develop their self-trust, because it's beautiful. I'm sure like people are watching and they're nodding and they can relate to the stories. But then what happens is that the video ends and it's like, what do I do?
I do?
Like, how do I, like, how do I develop this? So if I may, my work is about creating a toolbox, right? We all need a toolbox of things that are, as Theresa says, simple, not always easy to do. There's a difference between easy and simple, right? But simple to do, like palatable, chewable action things that we can actually put into our lives and see change. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So let me talk to you a little. I'll throw a couple out. I'll throw one out specifically that my clients are gobbling up right now. And it's actually just, it's so simple that sometimes it sounds silly, but it is powerful. So one of the ways, I want you to think about trust with yourself, just like you would think of trust with anyone else, because all of our relationships externally are mirrors of our relationship with ourselves. We can't escape that, right? So think about when you're developing trust with someone else. How do you develop trust with someone? You don't necessarily meet some complete stranger and totally trust them. Trust is built over time through consistency, people showing up, people being reliable, people being there, the presence of them. And so one of the great hacks that I love that is so absolutely doable for every single person watching and is so powerful is simply this. I want you every day, and I'm going to underline every day. That's why it's so simple, because you can do it every single day. Every day to find a time in the day, an approximate time in the day, that you can sit with yourself for 4 minutes. Now, everybody's got 4 minutes. It's not 5 or 8 or 10, it's 4 minutes. And maybe that's right after you brush your teeth in the morning. Maybe it's with your morning coffee. Maybe it's right after dinner when the dishes are done and everyone's kind of doing their own thing. It's really important to tie this time to another habit that you never miss. Like I never miss my morning coffee, so that's kind of my time. So, and then what I want you to do is I want you to find a space. This is really important. Find a space in your home that's going to be designated specifically for this practice. So I have a little chair. If you don't have a chair, get a blanket. This is really powerful. Use this blanket only for this practice and not for anything else. I have a little zebra blanket over here, zebra print. Then I only use this zebra print for this practice. So I make my coffee in the morning. I sit in this one little chair. I wrap myself in this zebra blanket and I burn some specific essential oil that's a specific scent that I only use for this practice. And the reason I do that is I want to connect, just like if you know anything about psychology, Pavlov and the dog, they ring the bell and the dog salivates, I don't know, but you want to get your body used to the feeling, the sensation, the trigger that this is what I'm going to do. So I wrap myself in the blanket, I sit in a chair, and I burn a specific essential oil. And then what I do literally for 4 minutes, I put a timer on my phone, is I just sit with myself. Now, everybody freaks out because they're like, what am I supposed to do? Meditate? No. Journal? No. Vision? No. Like what, do mantras and chant? And no. Literally sit with yourself. And you can put hand on heart, just putting your attention to your heart starts this cascade of chemical cocktails, dopamine, which is the love hormone, right? You just hand on heart and literally just be with yourself for 4 minutes. Now, don't let the simplicity fool you, because what I started to do this at the beginning of the pandemic, but what I recognize is that it is the daily habit, ritual, and it's a ritual. That's why I use all my senses, the blanket, the scent, the timing. It's a daily ritual of being with myself, building my self-trust muscle and saying to myself, I, Gina, am here for you every day at this time. And what happens is it's really all day long, what we're doing is we're bulldozering ourselves, we're abandoning ourselves. It's inevitable, right? Like we might have some anxiety come up about something and we're like, I don't have time for this. I got to cook dinner, or I got to answer the phone, or I've got to get to work, or I've got to. So all day long, we just keep bypassing and bulldozing ourselves. But this simple practice, it indicates to yourself, and your body will remember every day at approximately that same time, I am here for me. And you're literally just going to be present with yourself with nothing to do and no goal, but to be with yourself for 4 minutes. So it's as simple as that. Sorry, that went on really long, but it's a really powerful practice.
I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh, I'm doing it right.
Yes. Yes. Because we're such to-doers, right? It's like, give me something to do and should I be journaling? No, you can do that after if you have time, if you want to. And the reason this is so powerful is self-trust is built on the consistent presence that I can trust myself every single day, 4 minutes. That's why it's not 10, because then sometimes we won't do it. And it's just a simple practice of being with yourself. And it is mind-blowing how simple but amazing the effects of that are.
Oh, I know it. I'm living it. One of the things that I want to add to that piece is celebrate that you've done it every day, because that we don't celebrate ourselves enough. I don't believe, like, again, we're busy for this. We don't have time in that 4 minutes to celebrate at the very end that you showed up for you in those 4 minutes to do nothing. I'm a big, I'm a big advocate of celebrating your accomplishments.
Oh yeah.
So, and it's so true, that consistency. I remember the day that I started to consistently take a nap, and in the middle of the day, and it was like foreign, but I think what I'm hearing in the self-trust is trusting yourself to show up for you in given moments. And, everybody, I always say that there are many different paths to healing, and you just choose the road that your body resonates with. And, I really appreciate that consistency piece where you take that time to I call, from an energetic perspective, those 4 minutes where you're just still, you're doing nothing, you're not thinking about anything. It's like your body's free. It's light. It's not carrying anything. And you're just allowing something very pure to exist in that moment.
You're allowing time for yourself and you're showing up for yourself.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to try that, Gina. I mean,
Yeah.
I have other practices, of course, like meditation, right? That I'm very consistent with and is really important because it's my time. So, and sometimes that's at different times. I like the consistency, of course, I like that you do that though. I think that that's really important because my time is not consistent just because of the variability of my life. And like you said, like you've got this to do, or there's things and plans and whatnot. But I do like having a consistent time, like you said. But I want to try this. I like this, but there's other things as well.
The timing is really key because what I notice is my body remembers, just like every day, my body knows when it's coffee time. My body knows when it's sleepy time, my body remembers. And so you want to train your body, because what it does is the rest of the day when you are, abandoning or you're bulldozering through life, the body's like, it's okay, because I know tomorrow at this time, I'll have time for me. I want to give you one little tidbit with that, if it's helpful, because sometimes initially people are kind of like, oh, even the 4 minutes feels like a lot. What's been really helpful for a lot of my clients is you know, especially if for a long time we've abandoned ourselves, we don't have a lot of compassion for ourselves. We can get really angry and feel really ashamed that we've abandoned ourselves and not trusted ourselves. There's a lot of shame that goes on. Oh my gosh. And as Brené Brown says, you know, shame can only exist in dark places, right? So here's what I suggest if you really do struggle with this and you're trying it. I have a teeny tiny picture of, you know, beside my bedside table. I have my kids, I got my, you know, but I have a teeny tiny picture of me. I was about 3 years old. I had pigtails, little ribbons with polka dots and these horrific bangs. Oh my God, too short bangs. But I have a tiny little picture. And the reason I have that picture there is that there's oftentimes I cannot come to a place of compassion or even celebration, as Tanya says, for myself. I can't do it for my adult self. There's just too much resistance. Like, I should have known better. And why did I? And why can't I? And I self-admonish a lot. But what I can always do is find compassion and love for that little girl, for that 3-year-old girl. So what a lot of my clients have done, and I've done for myself as well, is sometimes I sit in that chair and there's a lot of resistance because I have a lot of the voices of should have, could have. I will take that little picture and just hold that picture close to me. And just the simplicity of directing my focus and attention to her, my little self, my younger self, sometimes makes it a little bit more palatable. So I just want to throw that out as a suggestion.
I'm just, as I'm listening, like, you know, as this practice of 4 minutes, and I'm only going to speak of myself, the more I started to take a nap and celebrate that, or the more I started to spend time with myself, you know, the word addictive is not necessarily one that I'd like to use, but it almost became addictive where I looked forward to spending that time with myself. And anybody knows, like everybody knows, I'm a conversationalist. I like to have conversations, but I've come to this place in my life where I actually look forward to being by myself because I want to be in that space of nothingness or just being in the presence of thyself. I'm so overly curious about Tanya, and that I look forward to wanting to discover so much more about her in that moment. And the more I discover and learn about thyself is the more I start to trust myself, because I embrace who I'm learning about.
Absolutely. I just want to, I know that you said like, I love this 4 minutes. For me, it's been meditation, because in essence, it's the same thing. And I know you have thoughts, and the same thing can happen when you're sitting there for 4 minutes, right? But, and you don't have to meditate for an hour, 20 minutes, or 5, whatever you have time for is good enough, right? But for me, that's what led me on this journey to begin with, to find myself, was to quiet my time for me, because I never did that. It was always about everybody else. It was about this life of craziness that, okay, what do I have to do? I woke up in the morning and it was go, go, go. And so for me, my go-to was meditation. And in that time, I felt the same thing. I felt like I was able to reconnect with myself. So I love what you're doing. I think that that's a great idea. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to be consistent for at least 21 days to make the habit, right? That's what they say, 21 days to create a habit.
But it's funny when you talk about putting over your hand over your heart and you're feeling your heartbeat for the first time, and you're feeling your lungs breathe for the first time. And it's like, ooh, like, you know.
And that happens during my meditations, right? I have my hand on my heart sometimes, or whatever I feel to do in that moment. And sometimes I'm lying down, even though they say sometimes you shouldn't, but sometimes I'm lying down, sometimes I'm sitting up. It's whatever I want to do for Theresa in that moment. And I feel like that's what's given me the strength to know who I am, because I really do feel like I was, for most of my life, I had no idea anymore. And that was all taken away for different reasons. But I love this being with yourself. I love that. That's what I live for, is to have those moments in time where I can be with myself. So I want to try yours though, because I think that gives it a whole new perspective, right? You're not meditating. There's nothing. It's just nothing, even though meditation is the same similar thing, but it really, you're not doing anything. You're sitting there, you're having a coffee, whatever it is that you're doing, and you're picking that one time. I think I really like this idea, Gina. I'm going to give it a go.
Yeah, let me know how it goes. Yeah, so a lot of times, a lot of people will say, well, you know, I actually had a client last week who said to me, I had a really hard time with this. I couldn't do it. So what I did instead was a guided meditation. And, I chuckled to myself because she's like, well, at least then I did something. Like, it's the same thing, right? And yes, no, because sometimes, first of all, meditation can seem very intimidating to a lot of people. Tried it, I can't do it. It's so hard. So I try not to label it anything. Like, and if maybe 4 minutes is a lot, like start with a minute. Just to sit with yourself and reconnect with yourself. I can say a lot more about this, but I and then meditate, and then do whatever.
Yeah.
But can you just be with you? And for a lot of us, we can't, because we've never, a lot of people really have a really hard time just doing this practice. So I don't want to intimidate you, but literally just doing nothing and just breathing with yourself and reminding yourself that you're there for you. And this actually helps with confidence and self-esteem. And I just want to make the bridge between those two things, because self-confidence is directly connected to self-trust. They're like peanut butter and jelly. They go hand in hand. Because Tanya said something, or maybe it was you, Theresa, like over time, you create a habit, right? Because you keep showing up for yourself, And when you look back and you notice, gosh, I've been doing this for 9 days, 9 weeks, 9 months, that builds your self-confidence and self-esteem, because you're like, I've stuck to this thing. And it may only be 4 minutes of sitting with yourself, but you're going to notice a difference. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to perpetuate and actually get your body, embody the feeling of coming back to yourself. Because most of us abandon ourselves all day long. So what does it feel like to just be with myself every single day for a couple
I like the way you said that, because I think a lot of times it's so important, because I'm a present person at this stage of my life, being present, because I think a lot of times it's so easy to analyze how we abandoned ourselves as children or as teenagers, or our parents abandoned us, whatever the situation is, how we've been taught to abandon ourselves. We don't realize that every single day we wake up, we are unconsciously abandoning ourselves.
Hell yeah.
And I think that that's so important.
I teach this and I do it every single day. I've probably abandoned myself 50 times. Like, abandonment is a simple, like breaking your self-trust. Like, honestly, I'm going to give you another practical tip, because I have to. Here's the thing. Here's another great, I have to just share this hack, because it's such a simple thing. Everybody has a phone, right? On your phone, I want you to set 3 random times throughout the day, like 9:17 in the morning, 1:42 in the afternoon, and like 6:02 in the evening, whatever, it doesn't matter. 3 random times that your alarm on your phone goes off. And every time that alarm on your phone goes off, as long as you're not driving or doing something, you're safe. I just want you to stop whatever you're doing. This takes 10 seconds. Stop whatever you're doing and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? That's it. What am I feeling right now? Because we are so used to numbing ourselves, bulldozering ourselves, overriding what we're feeling. And so back to Theresa's point about we don't even know ourselves. What am I feeling right now? And if you want bonus points, jot it down and give a little, maybe put it on your phone and start to look for themes. The reason this is so important is because you might notice, what am I feeling right now? Gosh, I'm feeling thirsty. Like I have to pee. Like you know what I mean? Like, I need to stretch, my back hurts. I've been sitting in this position. Like, that's as micro as self-abandonment is. So self-trust is just dropping in and saying, how am I feeling right now? I'm freaking thirsty. I'm going to go get, you know what I mean? Like, these are the small ways that we start to build our self-trust muscle. And I will say this based on my clients. A lot of people say, gosh, I don't even know how I feel. Go Google feelings list and take a screenshot and put it on your phone. Because a lot of us are like happy, sad, sleepy. I don't know. What am I feeling? And just kind of start to look through the words. This is such a beautiful way to start to come back and reclaim, what am I feeling right now? I'm noticing I'm anxious. I didn't even realize. Oh, I'm noticing
It's so, okay, so I'm into the whole spirituality and scientific aspect and fusing it together. I'm listening to you about the feeling, and I always say, guys, it's not so man think it, so it shall be. It's so man feel it, then so it shall be. And it's really focusing on the highest energy point in your body, which is your heart. What am I feeling? So I like the fact that you're reinforcing the connection to the feeling aspect, which is the highest energy point in the body, which is going to send the signal to the brain, which is going to release the chemicals, send all that emission out there, and that electric.
I also like it because in that moment, if you're anxious, you have the opportunity in that moment to change that, right? But if you are not even recognizing it, how do you change it? And this, because like I believe that we wake up in the morning and we're living our past all over again because we're mad about things that happened yesterday. We're thinking about, something that someone did. You're holding that grudge. And then what about all the other things? Like we're a spinning wheel, right? Like you said, it's absolutely, we're bulldozering. I love that, because we really are. We're looking at, what do I have to do this morning? Okay, first, the standard things because your brain automatically gets up and pees and does whatever the heck it has to do. Shower, I have to make lunches or, breakfast, and I have to get the kids ready. And we're not stopping. I like the pause. I know that I get anxious during those moments, but I don't even have time to feel the anxiety because I'm so, in fast motion about everything. And I don't get the time or the opportunity to switch that feeling or change that frequency or whatever you want to call it. But I like this because I think this is a great hack. I think that if people, and, myself included, who's bulldozering most days, stop to really think what I was thinking in that or feeling in that moment, that I would have that opportunity to say, okay, why am I feeling this way? And what can I do? Like you said, I'm thirsty, you fix it. You go get a drink, right? It could be that simple.
I was going to say, I like the
maybe I should go out for a walk. Like, what can I do instead of what I'm doing to switch that? And you know what? Sometimes we may surprise ourselves and say, wow, what a great day. I'm feeling great right now. I want more of this, right? So I really like that. I like that hack.
I think, and you nailed something that's so important because it's really about creating a pattern interrupt, right? What we're really doing is most of us live, 95% of our day runs on autopilot, right? Our unconscious runs the day. As you said, it's like all of our past. And so what this does is it creates a pattern interrupt. Literally, it interrupts our day and stops and puts a little wedge in our unconscious, programming, and says, just stop for a minute and drop in. And what's so powerful is, yes, there are times where I'm like, gosh, I gotta pee. I've had to pee, or I'm so thirsty, or I need to stretch, or gosh, I'm so anxious. Let me just breathe, take a couple of deep breaths. However, sometimes it's as simple as acknowledging the feeling, which starts to alchemize and change the energy of it. Just acknowledging, like think of a little kid who's really upset, right? Sometimes it's not about like taking them out of being upset. It's just saying, wow, you look really upset right now. Like the acknowledgement of it, just that alone sometimes can alchemize or change the intensity of it. And it's a beautiful place to start right there. Even if you can't address the anxiety, maybe you're anxious about something happening next week or a speech you have to get. I mean, I don't know. It could be anything. And in that moment, you can't do anything about it, but just acknowledging it starts to lessen the edge of it, if that makes sense. So I'm glad you pointed to that, Theresa.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, acknowledging is the first step anyways to anything, right? So absolutely. I love that. You can't always change it because it's going to be something that perhaps, like you said, is something that's upcoming or whatever the case may be. But you do have opportunity. But even if it is just taking a breath, because, to calm the anxiety in that moment, even though you're still going to be anxious about whatever you are anxious about, just to have that moment and recognizing, I think that's amazing. I like that. I like breaking that pattern. I think it's super important. I like the way you put it, Gina, for sure. I think it's a great tool.
Yay.
So I just, we have 15 minutes left of the show, and I want to take a little bit of thank you for, for all those little nuggets and sharing with the audience, all those little nuggets on self-trust. I want to spin it a little differently and take the opportunity of us uniquely of self-trust and what that looked like. We all went to high school together. For anybody listening in, we all went to high school together. And I think that the three of us have a unique story. It involved bullying. I'm going to talk about bullying. And it involved us all being bullied by the same individuals. I think, Gina, one of your talks went completely viral as a result of that bullying. Am I correct?
It was part of it.
The Too Much Woman video that went viral, it's only a 5-minute video. It's, just Google it. But there was a small component where I talked about the bullying.
Right.
Yeah.
And I thought, when you talked about it and I saw it, it brought back memories to being bullied by the same individuals. Theresa, you being bullied by the same individuals. And from the outside looking in, I was on the inside, Theresa was on the outside. Gina, I knew about you, but not to the extent, and not to the level that I did with Theresa. And I admire Theresa for standing up for herself in that situation. And I just thought it was interesting how years later we all reconnected, not knowing that we were all bullied by the same group. And we were all on this whole self-help healing journey path and discovering ourselves and loving ourselves. So I think this is so, this conversation particularly is dear to me, just on how the universe and God works and how it brought us together. I just wanted to ask the question and really open up the dialogue of what it looked like or felt like for you guys not to trust yourself in that situation.
Oh, wow. For me, I was really scared. Like, that was a really scary time. There were a couple of incidents that happened. I mean, I was jumped by this group and a knife was pulled out in a bathroom and I was scared. I didn't know what to do. I had a few friends who told me on the day that I was jumped that there was a group of people. And I was like, no, they can't all be there. Like, what do you mean? Like, I was so naive and oblivious to what was happening. And I thought, no, why would they do this? Like, I was, I just couldn't see it. And I remember walking out of the school and I looked around and went, oh my God, what the, and I kept walking thinking if I just walk away, everything's going to be okay. And that didn't happen. I got jumped that day. I got hit from behind, but my instinct, it wasn't trust. This was more of a survival thing at that point. I ran after the person that jumped me and I just started hitting her back. Like, I just went, what I thought I had to do in the moment because I was afraid that it would continue to happen. It was a really scary time. So I don't know if I trusted myself in that situation, Tanya, to be honest. I really believe that everything I did was instinctive, survival. And I don't necessarily think that that comes from trust. So you're asking, I don't believe I trusted myself in that situation. I was scared and I was surviving. So that was a time there that I didn't have self-trust at all. I don't know about you, Gina, like if it was the same circumstances. I know a little bit about what happened with you, but do you feel the same? Did you trust yourself in that scenario? I don't know. For me, it was survival.
So I was in grade 9 and the girls that beat me up were in grade 12. And it was literally the first month of high school. Like I was, talk about being green. I was like,
oh, wow.
So starry-eyed. And we went to an all-girls Catholic high school. I think that's important to underline.
Yes.
And when I started the school, I was feisty. That's part of my character. I was
too much woman.
I was too much woman even then. But what I was what we had. It was called initiation. And what that meant is for the first month of school, the older grades were initiating the grade 9s into high school. So they can ask them to do all kinds of ridiculous and humiliating things. And you had to do it. And if you didn't do it, there were repercussions. So I was really upset to see people that I knew, friends of mine, being absolutely humiliated. We wore uniforms, little kilts. One of my girlfriends was forced to tuck her kilt into her underwear and push a penny down the corridor with her nose, with her butt in the air. And I was with her. I was livid. Like, I just said, get up, like, you're not doing it. And I was like, I got a name for myself for for just fighting back, and I wouldn't do any of the things that they asked me to do. And I think that initially is what precipitated it. There were a few other things. You know, a guy who had an interest in me was someone that they all liked, and they, you know, so there were a few things that precipitated it. But I was surrounded at lunchtime by about 15 girls, and literally 2 held my arms, 2 held my legs, and I was just, they just went to town on me. I actually blocked it out. I don't remember what happened after that, but what I do know is that I literally just bloodied and bruised. I took 2 buses home. It took me an hour to get home because I live far away. I just got on a bus. I don't remember this, but I got on a bus. I got home and I went under the covers and I didn't tell anyone, and I fell asleep. And my mother came home and woke me up and saw like blood. Like she just brought me to the school, and we had a conversation with the principal, and I was petrified for 4 years at high school. Like, because even though those girls had graduated, it got passed down until I became, you know, the senior of the school. I was petrified for every single year. Right. It was just, it wasn't just one event. It was nonstop all the time.
And I was bullied on the inside, and where trust came in for me was I was taught always to betray myself. And being bullied and nobody sticking up for me or nobody being there to advocate for me, that's what relationships look like for me. And I always say relationships just aren't with, you know, your other significant other, it's the friendships you develop. So for me, I didn't know how to take care of myself. I only knew how to betray myself. I was taught before I even entered high school. So by the time I got to high school, I was seasoned, well-conditioned on how to betray myself, and I attracted the right people into my life that would reflect that. I didn't know how to do anything else, but I remember particularly knowing you two, you know, I'm on the inside and you guys are on the outside, and I remember seeing you guys and feeling like, wow, I felt awful because I was like, I don't even feel like I can do anything about it. And you guys had no idea I was on the inside going through it. So when it comes to self-trust, I think that, you know, it's important when we see our kids in school being bullied, and how are we teaching them how to betray themselves before they enter that social setting, I think is the question. It's a loaded one, and it's a whole other segment.
I think first of all, Gina, I didn't realize how bad it was for you. And I'm sorry, like I almost came to tears listening to you tell the story. So I'm really sorry that you went through that. I think bullying it's terrible. I dealt with it, and I, like you, was always afraid. I never knew anymore whether, so there was like, I can't relate to self-trust in any of that, because for a long time and for most of my high school years, I was scared. So it wasn't like I felt like empowered because I fought back. I always felt, when is it going to happen again? Where do I always have to look over my shoulder? I always felt that way. I don't know if any of that had to do with anything else that I was going through in my life and all the trauma that I faced in my earlier life, even though that was pretty early too. But I didn't have any form of self-trust about that. I was just scared.
I think it's so fascinating, and thank you for that. And you know, it's so fascinating to witness how different we all respond to the same thing. You know, Tanya, you know, assimilated to feel safe, and you fought back. What I did is, and I was petrified for 4 years. But here's the thing. Nobody ever knew it. Nobody knew it. My best friends didn't know I was petrified. I put on such a facade of strength and fearlessness and feistiness that people to this day are shocked to hear that I was in perpetual fear. Like when I say I wouldn't even go to the bathroom in the middle of class because I was afraid to not be around other, but nobody knew. And so that speaks to, for me, always for my whole life feigning fearlessness,
Mm-hmm.
protecting myself in that way.
Yeah.
And, it looked as though I was okay, but I was never okay. And talk about self-abandonment. It's like I wouldn't ask for help. I wouldn't tell people I was afraid. I wouldn't tell my parents I was beat up or fearful all the time. I mean, nobody knew, not even my best friends knew.
Yeah.
And so talk about self-betrayal. So that,
Absolutely.
and I really have no regret. Like, I really am at a place where I understand with absolute clarity how that specific journey informed my work and my life. I mean, I needed that to happen to get to this place to be in the solidarity of my body and my sovereignty right now. So I don't, it's a beautiful recollection for me, painful but beautiful, because had that not happened, so many other events would not have happened, which brought me here. So as
absolutely. And I appreciate the fact that we were able to come together and talk about it. And, we've had offline conversations about it, and I appreciate that. And you talked about the abandonment issue, like aspect of it. And I think that kind of ties into the self-trust, that we abandon ourselves in that moment. We were abandoning, however we were taught, it doesn't matter. And I agree with you that it's made us who we are today. It's a celebration of how far we've come. So many, it's loaded, it's packed with a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
We've got 3 minutes. Any last tie-in? Give you guys each a minute just to give the audience one last tip on developing the self-trust muscles.
I think I let Gina go last because I think she's brought some real power to this conversation. All I want to say, and it's something that Gina brought up as well, is that baby steps in trusting ourselves. It doesn't all have to happen at once. And even with myself, like I said, even though I made a big decision, it still took me baby steps to get to where I'm at today. I've been on this journey for a better part of, I'd say, 8 years. And every day I get better at trusting myself. So, and I know that will just continue and perpetuate, because once you start on that trajectory, it keeps going. It doesn't stop. So if you do it a little bit at a time, and you do it and, use some of the tools that Gina has given everyone. But if you're doing that or doing anything for self-care to learn to trust yourself, then that's all you need to do, a little bit at a time.
That's so beautiful. I absolutely amen, hallelujah to all of that. I think when I just sit with the final thought is, I really don't want anyone watching to look at us or me specifically ever, despite, my platform or what I do, and say, oh, she's arrived. I haven't arrived. I want you to understand that everything that I talk about and everything I speak to is what I still face every single day. And it doesn't get easier. You get better. And so there isn't the spiritual journey or the personal growth journey, it isn't an A to B. It's not a destination and you finally arrive and you're like, hey, we're done. We're good. I mean, literally.
Come on, you're supposed to give us hope there.
Right? It's not like you run through these ribbons and then you get a medal at the end. And it's like, oh, Gina's arrived. I've got the medals. No, the spiritual journey is a circle. And so I want you to just if you take anything away, have compassion for self, because it's a circle. Life ebbs and flows. I have moments when I'm under the covers, in my shame, and then I have tools that I use to pull myself out. And so I don't want you to think, how do I get there? People always say to me, I'm not where you are. I want to get there.
Oh, it bothers me to hear that.
Yeah. So I want to say from my heart that, this is this snapshot of this moment in time, but I am on the journey as well. We are all on the journey as well. In fact, anyone who tells you that they've arrived and they don't experience shame, fear, self-abandonment, they're lying. They're lying to you. So please do be compassionate with yourself. And I appreciate you having me here. Thank you for this time.
What an honor to have you guys on the show. Thank you. Thank you guys for everybody for tuning in. Thank you, ladies, for being with me this evening. You will find Theresa, she's my co-host. Teresa's on tanyatalks. You can also find Gina. I just want to remind everybody that Gina is Too Much Woman, helping you really embrace your too muchness. And you really do a really good job advocating for that and empowering not just women, but just people in general, really to step into their too muchness. And we thank you for that. GinaHatzis.com, HATZIS, YouTube and Instagram, Gina Too Much Woman, TikTok and Facebook. Facebook is Too Much Woman, Gina Hatzis, and TikTok is Gina Hatzis. Am I correct? Correct me on that. Am I correct?
You'll find me. You'll find me.
Okay. Look for Too Much Woman. It was a video that went viral, a 5-minute quick video of your Too Much Woman, where you were speaking about it, that went viral. I suggest everybody go and watch it. I encourage you all to watch it. And let's just continue up and onward with the journey, guys, that we're all in it together. We're all helping one another just become the best us we can be and lead healthy, happy, and healthy lives and loving lives towards ourselves. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Tune in next week where we will join you again. Thank you, ladies. Good night.
Thanks. Good night.